I love stop motion animation. So let's talk to the director of Memoir of a Snail. Adam, thank you for joining me on the Film Threat Interviews channel to talk about your film Memoir of a Snail. I love stop motion animation. Um, I've loved it since I was a kid. I'm sure you fell in love. That my first recollection of a stop motion animated movie was Mad Monster Party.
Oh yeah,
Do you remember that one?
yeah, I do actually. Yeah, from the 70s, was it?
Yeah. I just there's something about stop motion. It's tactile. It's real. It's something you can pick up and touch,
Hmm.
unlike drawings. So I've always loved the form. What made you fall in love with that? Because I mean, Memoir of a Snail is one of many films you have done. Just your resume is so impressive. So, how did you discover this medium?
Well, look, I've always been creative as a child. I was always drawing and making things out of old egg cartons and toilet rolls. I had a very rich imagination. But look, I didn't go to film school till I was 25, and I was sort of wanting to be a 2D animator. But when I was at film school, we did an exercise where we had to play with clay and animate it. And it was the tactile, tangible nature of it that I fell in love with. And I knew pretty quickly that I don't think I wanted to be one of those animators who had to sit in front of a computer screen all day, because CGI was just at its infancy. I thought, no, I think I'll go down the stop motion path, even though I was told it was a dying art form and it would soon be dead. And the opposite has obviously happened.
Well, computer animated movies just, for me, lack the charm. There's something about it that but what I find remarkable about your films is uh, they're not talking down to children. I wouldn't even say they're necessarily, well, kids could watch it. They're very adult themes. They're
Mm.
very, I mean, the tragic circumstances. Um, they're not, I mean, the first time I think I even recall seeing something stop motion that felt more for adults was seeing the works of the brothers Quay.
Yes. Oh, for
Um,
sure. Look, I've always seen animation as a medium and not a genre, and I think we've all been brainwashed into thinking that animation tends to be for children. But as you say, there's actually a long history of adult animation, particularly in Eastern Europe, countries like the Czech Republic and Estonia, and they've been doing it for 100 years. And so, yeah, I think the rest of the world's catching up, and there's lots of wonderful adult animation being made. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio and Wes Anderson's Isle of Dogs. They've all got an adult slant, and I know my films. They're rated R in America, and I certainly don't think children should go and see them.
well, not children of a certain age, certainly not
Little
single
kids,
digit age,
no.
but if I saw this movie as a teenager, I would love it.
Yeah, oh,
So
definitely. I think 13 and up is a perfect age, actually. And we've been getting a lot of young people coming to the screenings as teens and really enjoying the film.
and your films, your stop motion has a distinct style, different than, it's different than others we've seen or claymation and whatnot. Where did that style come from? And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to, perhaps we can look at the trailer and share that with our audience who will watch this interview. But where did that style develop?
Yeah, well, look, I always, have lent towards stop motion that's very rough around the edges, very organic, very asymmetrical, mainly because that's my characters are rough around the edges. They're all underdogs, they're all imperfect, they all lead very traumatic lives. I'm quite cruel to my lead characters. And a lot of stop motion at the other end of the spectrum is very slick, and also my budgets are much lower being independent. So yeah, we really like to celebrate the fingerprints and the brushstrokes. So again, to really push that message to the audience that these are real little blobs of clay. So yeah, so that's my aesthetic. It's what we call chunky wonky.
Oh, chunky wonky. I like that. I like that description. Let me share the trailer here. We'll watch it. It's a couple of minutes, and let's give it a look here. So hang on. I'm gonna mute myself so I don't echo. How about
Dad used to say that childhood was like being drunk. Everyone remembers what you did, except you.
Good one, Dad.
My twin brother, Gilbert. We had two souls, but one heart.
Look, Gracie.
Rabbit face, rabbit face, rabbit face.
Why are you dressed like an ant?
No, I'm a snail.
Oh, funny.
I believed in glasses half full and silver linings. Life was fleeting, but so precious.
Bravo!
Oh, now she's got a boyfriend.
Life can only be understood backwards, but we have to leave it forwards.
Say cheese, Gracie.
Snails never go back over their trail.
As soon as I'm old enough and got money, I'm coming to get you.
Childhood was life's best season. It never lasts, but everyone deserves one. I remember everything.
it's really a personal story. It's really very personal and so many great human moments. Can you talk about where that came from?
Yeah, well, all my films are, based on my family and friends, and I'm very lucky I don't have to look far. And this one is sort of based on a very close friend who was born with a severe cleft palate and had a very traumatic childhood, but grew up to be this very flamboyant, confident person. So I was always fascinated by her life. But also, too, my father, who passed away about 8 years ago, left behind a giant hoard of stuff that my siblings and I had to sort through, and we became very fascinated with why did he have all this stuff. And so I did a lot of research into hoarding and the psychology, and more often than not, extreme hoarders have suffered a lot of trauma and loss in their lives. So there's sort of these two ideas that sort of merged, and it took me 3 years to write the script. I did 16 drafts. I did a lot of research, and I wanted to make the film very potent, very personal, very intimate, which is why I made it a memoir. And but also very funny. We tried to squeeze in as many jokes as possible to sort of balance the darkness.
Yeah, and the jokes really land with just all the just tragic aspects of it, and then you're laughing. So the color palette is also it's the movie is not black and white. Obviously, we just saw the trailer, but it has a really distinct look and has a feel that feels black and white in a
Yeah,
sense.
Yeah, I wanted a color palette that was very minimal and very suited to the moods of the characters, their psychological states, but also, growing up in the 70s in Australia, it was a very brown period. Everyone was painting their houses brown, beige wallpaper, beige carpet. And that's how I remember the 70s, as being very brown. So that's what we did. But also brown can be very warm. And so we really warmed things up, particularly towards the ending. And again, we wanted the film to really be different to other stop motion films, other animated films, or any live action films. I think these days there's so much content out there. To really stand out, you really got to make your aesthetic very different and original.
And what another interesting thing in the movie is it's kind of self-reflexive, because your lead character makes stop motion in your stop motion film, and you see, I think it was a Bolex. Was
Yes.
that yeah. What inspired that?
Well, look, I love films by Christopher Nolan. Who doesn't? And of course, Inception, where the metaverse. I love films within a film within a film. So we thought we'd play around with that idea with a bit of tongue in cheek. And so yes, Grace becomes a stop motion animator and makes her own film, gets into a film festival, and has a Q&A afterwards. So we wanted to really twist and play with people's brains in this film.
Yeah, and the film played at Telluride. What was that experience like?
Oh, look, we've been so chuffed with all the big festivals we've been getting into. Telluride, we just won the London Film Festival. We were competing against live action films. San Sebastian, Zurich. We opened the Melbourne Film Festival. So, yeah, the film's really off to a great start. We never knew when the film was finished how it would go because it is so quirky and unusual. We thought maybe it was too strange for people. So we're really relieved because it did take my artists and I 8 years to make, and so it could have been a big waste of time.
Can you talk to me about the process? We've gotten glimpses into other studios and how they approach stop motion. A lot of it augmented by CGI.
Mhm.
So what is in terms of your studio and your process? How is it different, and what techniques do you prefer?
Well, I think what makes us different is we really do like to do things in a traditional manner. So our aim is to say to the audience that everything they've just seen on the big screen, every prop, every set, every character is handmade and that there's no CGI at all. We certainly clean up the film in post-production, but everything you see is something you could touch. And so even the fire in the film is yellow cellophane, the cigarette smoke is cotton wool, and all the tears in the film, all the rivers, anything that's liquid, any water is it's actually sexual lubricant. We went through liters and liters and liters of it.
Oh,
So yeah, it is a traditional film, but we certainly use digital cameras, digital lighting, digital editing. We embrace digital technology, but everything in front of the camera is traditional.
wow, wow. And then in terms of pulling it all together, you mentioned 8 years. When do you go into when you're like, okay, we're ready, we're going? I imagine there are not many deleted scenes, right? Because every frame, you're creating every frame. So how do you go through the editing process? Do you look at like, well, we don't need this scene or we need to add this as you're making it? Is that how it goes? Or
Yeah, look, it's a very prescribed art form, so we do very detailed storyboarding. Like most animated films, everything is very planned out. And then in the editing process, it's really, there's not much to play with, unfortunately. We dropped one scene, but pretty much everything you see is what we shot. But what's tricky in the editing is to really get that balancing act between the comedy and the tragedy. And also, this film we had the music was fully composed, so we toed and froed with the orchestra and the composer Elena Katzer-Chernin to really get that music intertwined and perfectly balanced. So it took 6 months just to do the post production. So yeah, it's a very linear process, very prescribed. We only had 7 animators, and they only each did between 5 and 10 seconds per day. So the shoot alone went for 33 weeks. But weirdly, the writing took longer than the actual making of the film.
I'd like to talk about the cast. You are among the cast, but you've also got notable names like Nick Cave, Eric Bana. When you start casting, is it nearly when it's done, or is it at the beginning? How does that work in terms of pulling your voice talent together?
Sure. Well, look, even right back at the very first draft, I really started to think about which actors' voices I wanted to loan. And Sarah Snook was certainly one of the first actors I had in my head. Jackie Weaver, Cody Smith McPhee. And yes, we do need the actors up front because if they're talking anywhere in the film, we need to animate to their voices. So we try to get as many of them up front as possible. But then certainly actors like Nick Cave, we were able to record him towards the end. he only has a cameo role, so it was less to do. And of course, the actors are all recorded in isolation. Not one of them was ever in the same room as any of the other actors. It's all done in a vacuum in a way.
And if you can, last question, what are you working on now? You didn't also want to point out you did Mary and Max back in the day. Amazing. But you've got to, because this process is so long, I'm sure you're working on something new. Is it too early to discuss?
No. I mean, I'm always, I know Woody Allen, when he finished a film, he'd launch straight into the writing of the next one, and I'm trying to do the same. And it is hard because I'm on the road promoting this film all around the world. So, I've started to write bits and pieces in hotel rooms, and the next film is a road film. I really want to get away from characters locked in their bedrooms in suburbia. I want to break free and do something like, I don't know, Thelma and Louise, a real sort of big road epic trip.
Well, Adam Elliot, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today about Memoir of a Snail, which is in theaters. I've seen the film, but I have tickets to see it in a theater because I want to see it on the big screen. I think I just, we don't get a lot of stop motion movies in a given year, and one put together with such love. So I plan to see it on the big screen. Thanks for talking to me today.
Thanks, Chris. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Take care.